What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'll take you through a simple way of drawing a human figure in some steps. I will also share some tips that will help to prepare for the next step. So, I use Clip Studio Paint and the brush I use is called calligraphy. It is a default one. Here are the properties. Stabilization is low, so I can draw loose. And I use pen pressure for size and opacity. I always start with observing and analyzing the pose, and I build up like a general idea on how I'm gonna start. So, what am I observing? The first thing is the long lines and curves, like from her left shoulder to her left toe. It is like a long S curve. Also, the line of action itself that connects head to rib cage to the pelvis, the perspective of the head, rib cage, and the torso as a whole, the shoulder and the pelvis angles. And I don't bother that much with hands and legs, since once you draw the torso right, the other parts are easy to draw when you construct it well. And I'll show you what I mean by that while drawing. So as you see, I always start from the head, and it is not a standard thing you should follow. Sometimes I do and others I don't. So the first stage is gesture. Drawing curves, lines, and S curves to show the flow and conveying the pose to the viewer, so I can build up on later. I'm showing you here the perspective of the head by drawing a box, which is only for demonstration, since as I said, I need flow, and boxes kinda make body parts look stiff. Now I know she looks down, so how am I gonna draw a head gesture? I start with a circle, then I draw a tangent line for her face side, and then connect that with a curve from the back of the head. A line for the eyebrow and chin, just to show their perspective. I already told you I'm trying to build for the next stage, so whatever guides I need to put, I will, like a curve, a line, and so on. Now I'm showing the head tilt. I should have shown this tilt from the start, and which is tilted down to the side. And as I'm starting to draw, I use a downward curve to show that she's looking down. So it is similar to the box I already drawn, showing both sides of the box. Now I show you that the head is a cylinder and it is actually tilted downwards. Again, guys, these are just guides for me. It also gives the overall drawing cool looking vibe. The second step is drawing the shoulder and pelvis angles and attaching them to each other with that line of action that shows the flow and direction of the whole torso. Now I'm showing you the perspective of the rib cage by drawing a box, which is a box in 2-point perspective. So I'm seeing the front plan, which is from the shoulder to the shoulder, going down to the end of the rib cage. Then the side of the rib cage. A great line that helps me to know how to draw that box is the angle of the shoulder line, which is the top of the box. If you do not know how to draw a box in perspective, then it is gonna be hard to show that on your drawings. And that's the importance of applying basics to your human figure drawing. So again, I'm showing the front plan, the side plan, and the lower plan, since the rib cage is already created that way, even if you are standing straight. And don't mind those curves to the crotch, they just help me to contain the front plan of the torso. Now I'm looking for the stretch and pinch parts of the torso. As you see here, she's actually leaning to the back on her right shoulder. So that gives a stretch on her left side and a pinch on her right side. And then I draw a half circle below showing the pelvis. The torso is now done. Whatever comes next is easier. But as you see, I'm showing you if you draw the rib cage and pelvis as a rounded shapes, and also if you draw them as boxes. The same concept applies. We can see the bottom plan of the rib cage and the upper plan of the pelvis. But that does not work on extreme poses, so keep that in mind. On the right here, I'm showing also how the body is balanced from the profile view, so you can understand more what I meant by the lower plan of the rib cage and the upper plan of the pelvis. Alright, what are those curves I have been asked about multiple times? These are curves that showing the direction of the roundness of the objects. Rib cage direction is up, so I'm drawing an upward curve. Pelvis is looking down, so I'm doing a downward curve. As simple as that. I will also show that drawing the limbs, since I'm gonna consider them as cylinders. Now for the arms and legs. I like to extend as curves to show the flow, but on the reference I'm showing you the construction, since I like to combine construction and gesture into one step. Since I don't want to waste too much time drawing only the gesture, then construction. Okay, how to construct legs and arms. Consider each part as a cylinder. For the arms, you have two cylinders, one from the shoulder to the elbow, and the other from the elbow to the hand. And keep in mind, you gotta taper those cylinders to match the shape of the arms. Also, the same for the legs, since the thigh is big and it goes down to the knee, which is smaller. Now the knee is big compared to the start of the foot. So you have, as I said, to taper those cylinders down. Okay, but how I know the perspective of the cylinder? So I can draw those curves wrapping around, going upward or downward. And what if I can't even decide if it is leaning towards or away from us? Alright, if the cylinder is leaning towards the viewer, which is you, then you're gonna see the upper oval. If it is leaning backwards or away from the viewer, then you're gonna see the lower curve. As an example, from the knee to the foot on her right leg, you can see that the cylinder is actually leaning, or her knee is leaning towards us. That's why we see in the upper oval. That's also why I'm doing the downward curves. But what if I can't decide if it is leaning towards or away from us, like her left leg? Then you gotta deal with it as a rectangle. You're not going to see either of the upper or the lower ovals. And believe it or not, that's it. All of the upcoming steps are actually the anatomy parts, which you might say that it is the important part, and it is not. The ones that I did are the most important ones, and I have talked a lot about that. my anatomy knowledge is not that high, but I know how to manage with those things I already know, which I have multiple videos that you can check talking about that specific topic on how you can have the least amount of anatomy knowledge and you still manage to draw a believable good drawing. So, keep watching if you are interested to see this process and see you on my next video. Thanks for watching.